first question is, what is the English test do I need to take? And what score do I need to get to work as a nurse in Australia? I'm very specific here, Canada, New Zealand, and United Kingdom.
I believe the focus of our discussion for this morning, IELTS versus OET. So basically, what's our suggestion? If you are totally undecided, okay, I want to go abroad, but I'm not sure where I want to go. They just enroll in a preparation course because they know that an English examination is required, but they have no idea where to go. So I recommend that these people take IELTS because they can use that result for up to 6 countries. But for certain nurses who are determined to apply for working visa, that's when I tell them, you go for OET if you're sure that you're going to Australia, New Zealand, UK, Ireland.
On this video, we'll talk about IELTS versus OET. Which test should you take?
And we invited one of the best in the Philippines. And thank you again, Sir Ervin. And of course, we initially invited Sir Ervin, but he wanted to bring someone who's very good at, and he's a nurse as well. So we've seen your scores in IELTS, close to perfect. Kakatawa. And I just want to share that. Can I share that on the screen? Yung scores with IELTS and OET.
Credibility.
Yes, please do.
So of course, kasi diba, you would want to listen to someone who've done it themselves and have proven that they can, and then how you can educate yourself and inspire yourself. How do you get those scores? And that's what we are going to talk about today. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen sa mga scores nila. Okay, so that's Mr. Ervin, and look at that, 8.5, 8.5. Wow. So guys, if you can see that 8.5, and the perfect score, as you know, is 9. I don't know how he got that one. So yeah, we'll find out today. And of course, for Sir Pheelyp, it's a very unique name. So that's OET score. Listening is A, reading is A. Wow. And yes, overall, this is perfect talaga. Grabe. My first question is, what is the English test do I need to take? And what score do I need to get to work as a nurse in Australia? I'm very specific here, Canada, New Zealand, and United Kingdom.
Okay, perhaps we'll start with English examinations. So TOEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language, is the oldest English examination in the world. If I'm not mistaken, it was established in 1959, so it's older than most of us. TOEFL is an American product. No wonder why it's accepted in the United States of America. Now, another English examination, IELTS, International English Language Testing System. This was established in 1989, which means to say it's 31 years old and older than some of our nursing applicants who want to pursue a career in other countries. So IELTS is most popular simply because it's accepted in all 6 English-speaking countries. So there's US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland. Now, if you're a nurse pursuing a career in any of these 6 countries, it's the academic module that you're supposed to take. Another option is PTE, Pearson's Test of English. This one became popular in 2011, 2012, if I'm not mistaken. And nurses can use this one if they want to register for an MBA, Nursing and Midwifery Board of Australia. Well, right now, PTE is accepted by certain institutions in the United States of America, and PTE is hoping that United Kingdom Nursing and Midwifery Council will also accept PTE results someday. Now here comes Occupational English Test, OET, gaining popularity in the last few years. OET is focused on your occupation. That's why letter O there stands for occupation. It's very popular among nurses and other health workers because it's relatable. So they can use OET results if they're going to UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand. So I believe the focus of our discussion for this morning, IELTS versus OET. So basically, what's our suggestion? If you are totally undecided, okay, I want to go abroad, but I'm not sure where I want to go. Just to give you an idea, in the Philippines, more than 4,000 Filipinos take the IELTS every month. This is before COVID. Of the 4,000 Filipinos taking the examination every month, 70% are nurses. So, for the 70% of the nurses taking the examination, more than half of them are not yet sure where to go. They just enroll in a preparation course because they know that an English examination is required, but they have no idea where to go. So I recommend that these people take IELTS because they can use that result for up to 6 countries. But for certain nurses who are determined to apply for working visa, that's when I tell them, you go for OET if you're sure that you're going to Australia, New Zealand, UK, Ireland. So I just want these nurses to know that you cannot use OET to register as a nurse in US and Canada, but you can use IELTS for up to 6 countries. So that's the simplest way, perhaps, of answering the first question, what English examination you need to take. Now, for the passing score, each country has its own target band score. So to clarify, this is not a pass or fail examination because each country has its own preferred target. It's just that if you're totally undecided, we recommend that you get 7 in all components. Because if you get 7 in everything, you can apply for up to 6 countries. But if you get a 6.5 in writing, you cannot go to Australia, you cannot go to New Zealand, but you can use your IELTS result for US, Canada, no, sorry, not Canada, because to register as a nurse in Canada, you need to get at least 7. But you can use that 6.5 if you want to enter Canada as a student or as an immigrant. Now, I just want people to know it's much better if you get a higher band score because with a higher band score, you have unlimited options. So for OET, the target, we recommend at least B in all components so that you can use that up to 4 countries.
Yeah, wow.
I hope you guys are taking note of every information. I hope you came in prepared with notebook and pen.
If you enjoy watching this video, please hit like and subscribe. Salamat po!
Okay, so for our second question, please give us an overview of the IELTS format, including the computer-delivered versus the paper-based format.
Okay, so I'll do the IELTS part and then Pheelyp will discuss the OET part. Okay? So when IELTS was introduced, it was just pen and paper version. 2 years ago, the Philippines was the very first in Asia to offer computer-delivered IELTS. Now, upon hearing computer-delivered, some people are thinking, oh, I have a computer at home. I have a laptop at home. Does that mean that I can just take the examination at home? The answer is no. You still need to go to the facility of IDP and British Council and take the examination under test supervision. So the question is, where can I possibly take computer-delivered IELTS? If it's IDP, the options are Manila and Cebu. In Metro Manila, IDP computer delivered facility is located in Ortigas. IDP Cebu, well, I'm not from Cebu. I forgot the exact venue, but definitely in the business district because IELTS is quite picky with the venues of the examination. So for British Council, there are 3 options for computer delivered exams. Baguio, again, because I'm not from Baguio, I cannot remember the specific venue, but for sure, it's in the business district. Cebu is option number 2, and then in Metro Manila, it's in BGC. So we're exactly in BGC, right across St. Luke's. So FYI, if there are people coming from Mindanao, like originally Miss Lovely is also from Mindanao, also from Mindanao, no computer-delivered IELTS in Mindanao. So the only option in Mindanao is paper-based IELTS. So for people coming from Mindanao who would like to take computer-delivered IELTS, they apply to Manila or Cebu to take the computer-delivered version of the examination. Now, we've just mentioned where you're supposed to take the test. So even if you have a computer at home, no, sorry, can't do that. You have to go to the testing facility. What about the 4 subtests? Pen and paper listening. Apparently, you have your test booklet with you. You're using Mongol 2 as your writing material. But for computer-delivered IELTS, there are certain test supervisors who do not give you any scratch paper at all. That is why I'm letting the candidates know they have to be technologically savvy with the QWERTY keyboard. Why? Imagine if the answers are given one after another and they don't have a pen, they don't have a paper with them. So for pen and paper IELTS, Test supervisors will definitely give you 10 extra minutes to transfer your answers. But since there's no paper provided by some test supervisors in computer-delivered IELTS, no more 10 extra minutes after the listening test. We proceed immediately to the next test. Now, let's talk about reading. Pen and paper IELTS. How do you highlight the keywords in the passage? You have your test booklet with you. You have your Mongol number 2. You underline, you encircle. You can do that. But for computer-delivered IELTS, no test booklet. How do you highlight the keywords in the passage? By using your computer mouse. And then, another comparison. Pen and paper IELTS, apparently, you cannot adjust the font size. But for people like me with poor eyesight, computer-delivered IELTS will allow you to adjust the font size. One concern for pen and paper IELTS. People need to flip-flop from one page to another, transferring from the passage to the questions. It's just that for computer-delivered IELTS, you don't have to worry about flip-flopping of pages. Why? The screen is divided. I'm looking at myself in the webcam. The screen is divided into two, okay? So, left-hand side portion of the screen, there you will find the passage. And then, right-hand side portion of the screen, you will find the questions. So, instead of flip-flopping, you can adjust, okay? Scroll up, scroll down. And then, writing subtext. Pen and paper IELTS, you are on your own to determine how many words you have written so far. So, minimum task 150 words. Minimum for task 2, 250 words. But for computer-delivered IELTS, you don't have to worry about counting anymore, simply because there is a word count feature. So if you direct your attention to the lower right-hand side portion of the screen, there you will find the word count. Now, what about speaking subtest? This is the only subtest which is not delivered in front of a computer. So you still need to go to the Office of British Council or IDP, talk to the examiner in person. So I repeat, only speaking remains face-to-face. No computer involved, even if you're taking the computer-delivered IELTS. But what's the difference? Pen and paper IELTS, speaking subtest might not fall on the same day as the written exams. So it could be the day before, it could be same day, or it could be the day after. But for computer-delivered IELTS, the promise of British Council and IDP, you get to finish all the 4 subtests in one day. If you check the website of British Council and IDP, they conduct written exams 2 times in one day. So in the morning, if you choose the morning session for the written exams, definitely you're going to have the speaking subtest in the afternoon. Now, if you choose the afternoon session for the written exams, you get to have the speaking subtest in the morning. So for people who are working, this might be a better option for them because they don't have to file for leave from work for like 2 days or 3 days. The guarantee is they get to finish all the 4 subtests in one day. That's the case for computer-delivered IELTS. What about the availability of results? Pen and paper IELTS, 13 calendar days after the written exams, that's when the results become available. But for computer-delivered IELTS, results are out in just 5 to 7 calendar days. Now, some people are asking, 5 to 7 days? Can they give a definite day so that we won't prolong our agony of waiting? Okay, simple tip. They just have to look at the calendar. If the 5th day happens to be on a Saturday, they have to wait until Monday because they don't release results on weekends. That's why it's 5 to 7 days. Now, the question that everyone is asking, the million-dollar question. So, sir, which one do you think is easier? Is it pen and paper IELTS or computer-delivered IELTS? Wrong question to ask. Why? It's because they use exactly the same material. So the difference is where you are taking the test. Are you taking it in front of a computer or are you using pen and paper? So instead of asking me which one I recommend, I'd rather that you ask yourself, are you more comfortable using the keyboard or are you more comfortable using paper and Mongol number 2? I am a traditional person. I cannot survive without paper. That's why personally, I'm going to take rather pen and paper IELTS. But it's up to you guys. Not all people are the same. Others have their own preferences. So that's for the IELTS part. Maybe Pheelyp here can discuss how it's like in OET.
So yeah, that's actually the third question. So since you are OET, so that's very, very thorough answer, guys. And I hope you got that. You can always review this video anyway.
Well, before I discuss the OET format in greater detail, I'd like to touch on the difference between computer delivered and paper based. Now, OET is a relatively recent exam, so it's, as Sir Ervin said earlier, it's become popular only very recently. The Does OET have a computer based test? Yes, it's called OET at home. So uh, given the pandemic that we're all going through right now, this doesn't stop the need for candidates to be able to prove their English proficiency. So sila na nag-adjust. No? So therefore, eventually, they're going to be trialing OET at home. So you're going to have a 360-degree camera installed in your domicile, in your residence, so that the examiner can see everything that's happening in your room, so that this verifies that you're not cheating, etc., etc. However, this is something that is in the very early stages pa lang, and they're still trying it out sa UK, I believe. In the recent seminar that OET conducted regarding the Philippine situation, at least, they said that wag na muna tayong umasa, no? That is going to happen anytime soon. No? So it's not something that we can look forward to at any time. But that's something in the far future, and for people who have no plans of taking their exam anytime soon, then maybe baka abutan ka pa ng computer-based test, na OET at home. However, for the vast majority, it's going to be a paper-based test. And similar to some of the situations mentioned earlier regarding the IELTS, in the OET naman, it's always 1 day long. So for people, as mentioned by Dana Faith in the comments, hi Dana, it is indeed important that we are able. It's really better for you to just allot 1 day for your exams, kasi mahirap mag-leave, right? Brasohan yan, right? Pinaglalaban yan. So therefore, it is critical that therefore it's good in the OET. At least it's just 1 day. Now, what happens in what's the format for OET? The OET measures the same communicative skills that the IELTS does. So there are 4 criteria: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The primary difference between them, though, is that whereas IELTS is a general English test where you can talk about anything under the sun, like global warming, gardening, jam making, and in the OET, it is a healthcare focused test. The OET is good for 12 professions: nursing, medicine, podiatry, dietetics, pharmacy, radiology, physiotherapy, and all the other stuff. So therefore, the it's going to be much more familiar. We are not going to talk about global warming, but maybe now we're going to talk about nephrolithiasis, or we're going to talk about metformin, and compliance, and things like this. And the given the focus on healthcare and OET, the listening tests, for example, reflect real world scenarios and contexts that fellow nurses or fellow healthcare professionals encounter all the time. For example, in listening, it's made up of 3 parts. It assesses 3 different ways of listening: listening for specific information, listening for gist, and listening for opinions. So, for example, part of that part is the format there is you're a healthcare professional and you're listening to a patient. You're like getting the history. You know? You're performing assessment and you're jotting down notes just like you would in your everyday duty. So that's really great. You're going to be listening to nurses or rad techs endorsing one patient to the other. You're going to listen to people talk for an extended time regarding a healthcare topic. So it's very familiar. Reading takes a similar form. You're also being assessed for 3 kinds of reading: reading for specific information, gist, and opinions. What are you going to read? References, like parang extracts from maybe like memes or healthcare stuff, the guidelines, infection control manuals, emails from the supervisor. Again, the focus is on real world context in a healthcare situation. Writing is similar to that as well. Whereas in IELTS writing, you write 2 things: writing task 1 and writing task 2, a statistical report and an argumentative essay, which for a lot of people you don't really do in the real world. For OET though, you write a letter. It's essentially a handover letter from you, a nurse, to a fellow healthcare professional in which you're endorsing a patient, which again we do all the time. You're given like case notes, you're given like parang chart, where you're given information regarding somebody, and your job is to select which of this information is important, which is not, and then you you hand it over to somebody else. Speaking is lastly very similar as well. Whereas in the IELTS, you talk about what's your favorite food, mga ganyan.
Anything under the sun.
Yes, when was the last time you attended a ceremony? Like what? What? No? In right, I know, right? In OET though, it takes the form of a role play, whereas you're fulfilling your role as a nurse and you're talking to a layperson, and you perform the communicative tasks that we do all the time. How do you reassure somebody who's worried about their upcoming surgery, for example? How do you deal with somebody who already has a terminal illness and who's already, convalescing maybe? How do you handle somebody who's upset because hindi mo pinapansin yung call bell niya for the longest time? How do you explain procedures? So, very familiar. So, very. So, there's a very big difference between the two tests, but they measure the same kinds of skills: listening, reading, writing, and speaking.
Wow.
Thank you. That was really good, Anne.
So for my number 4 question, so which test is easier, or at least in your experience, which test has a higher passing rate? Is it the IELTS or the OET?
Okay. I finished a degree in BA Communication Research. That's a statistical writing course from UP Diliman. So I hope that you understand where I'm coming from. Statistics is very important for me. So to answer your question, I'll use statistics, okay? I'll discuss IELTS statistics, while Pheelyp here will discuss OET statistics. Okay. I tell you, you can pass listening and reading on your own. You don't need someone to help you out, okay? But a lot of people find these examinations challenging because of writing and speaking. So let's talk about the national average for speaking. As I've mentioned earlier, if you are a nurse planning to work in US, UK, Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, all 6 of them require a grade of 7 in speaking. So that is the target of the nurse, regardless of the destination. But what is the national average grade in speaking? 6.8. Simple mathematics, simple common sense tells us that more than 50% of the nurses, Filipino nurses in particular, because that's the national average, do not get the required band score. Why? Because of this, as Pheelyp said, dangerous overconfidence. Because I've been talking in English since birth, so I don't need to prepare for an English examination. But they do not understand what this examination is looking for. So they take the examination knowing that they've spoken English for 2 decades already, and they're quite shocked why they only got 6.5. Now, what about the writing portion? If you're going to Australia, New Zealand, Canada as a nurse, the requirement is 7 in writing. UK, 6.5 in writing. Ireland recently, as they've announced, now accept 6.5 in writing. And then USA doesn't really care whatever grade you get in the writing subtest. So if you get 5 in writing, you can go to US. If you get 6.5 in writing, you have 3 destinations. If you have 7 in writing, you have 6 options to choose from. But what about the national average of Filipinos in writing? It's 6.2, which means to say, if you consider yourself an average Filipino whose English is also average, you're only good enough for the United States. But you have to be above average for you to go to UK or Ireland. But you have to be over the top. You have to belong to the upper 10% of the Philippine echelon if you are aiming for a 7 in writing. So that's the case in IELTS. Okay, so I'm not saying it's more difficult. I'm not saying it's easier. But if you're going to use statistics as basis, that should give you an idea what are the chances of you making it in the examination. But what about OET statistics?
When OET came here to the Philippines to talk about statistics and how we Filipinos tend to perform in the exam, we were given a very reassuring statement. Sabi nila that Filipinos, we score the highest in the world when it comes to OET speaking. Apparently, magaling tayo dyan, yung mga, how are you? Go on, tell me more. You seem upset. No? Things like this. Because, I mean, this is something that the numbers prove that we're pretty good. Puerto Rico down number 2, basta number 1 tayo. So when it comes to OET speaking, at least, we perform very well. However, to answer the question, which is easier, neither. As that's a question that we get a lot, and the answer that we always give is that though OET may be more familiar to you if you're a healthcare professional, it's not going to be easier. The fact that the context and knowledge that you will encounter there is familiar may assist you, but at the end of the day, it is a communicative skill test. It's skills yung labanan. So therefore, exposure to the language in listening, in reading, and actually using it, and actually practicing it in terms of writing and speaking, that is what makes all of the difference. So therefore, when it comes to higher passing rate, the real difference is not between English exams, but between your own preparation. Because whether you take the IELTS or the OET, if you prepare for it, if you clock in the hours, if you put in the work, you listen to English, you read texts, you write down stuff, you find time in your busy life to devote to preparing for the test, then it doesn't really matter. Because as evidenced by students who have done pretty well, you can do well in both. And you can also suck in both. So it's not the test, it's your preparation that makes the difference. Right?
Yeah, so make sure you prepare,
Preparation
guys.
key.
Exactly.
If you enjoyed watching this video, then I am sure you'll enjoy part 2 of this interview, and you can watch it right here. As always, I wish you all the best with your journey, and I hope you will be blessed. I'll see you soon. Bye!